good evening, and welcome to the St. Petersburg By Night podcasting network. Tonight, we present to you our behind-the-scenes show, After Dark. Welcome back, everyone, to the St. Pete by Night Twitch stream where we play St. Petersburg by Night, a massive multiplayer 5th edition campaign set in the world of darkness in St. Petersburg, Florida. My name is Kent, also known as Misha Kent on all social media, and what you're tuning into tonight is After Dark. For those who don't know, After Dark is our behind-the-scenes show that we do every week where we talk to storytellers, players, movers, and shakers within St. Pete by Night and the world of darkness as a whole. And we kind of peel back the curtain. We remove the mask of the masquerade and talk about the lore of the game. We talk about what makes St. Pete by Night exist, how it works, how we can kind of pull off all of this amazing content that we create for you each and every week. And tonight we're talking to one of our tables, the Rage Across Tampa Werewolf the Apocalypse table, in our first ever table chat that we are doing here on After Dark. Before we get into that, though, I would like to mention that we are having a giveaway tonight. This giveaway is brought to us courtesy of Chromatic Creations US, run and operated and manufactured by our very own Crafty Mirage. She creates all of your possible needs for dice bags, for other gaming accessories. And tonight she is providing that dice bag that you see on screen right now on the right for free to somebody who is lucky enough to be tuning into this stream live. So all you have to do to be entered for that giveaway is put hashtag crafty in the chat, and you will be entered for that very dice bag. That exact one, the one you're seeing in the picture. No substitutes, no additions. That dice bag could be yours if you put in hashtag crafty in the chat. Again, we're talking about Rage Across Tampa, our first ever delving into the Werewolf the Apocalypse splat and set across the bay from St. Petersburg in the city of Tampa. We are seeing the werewolf side of things, an entirely different view, an entirely different kind of perspective on the events of this city, and witnessing some of the fallouts of the events of Tampa and the events taking place in St. Petersburg on the Kindred side. But before we get into all that, let's go ahead and introduce the amazing guests and players that make Rage Across Tampa happen. Say hello, guests.
Hey everybody, I'm Preston. Normally I am here playing Aiden Goodspeed, but tonight I am just me.
Hi, everybody. I'm Champ, Champagne, C-Pain, if you're feeling frisky. And I usually play Aspen Weiss, but today I am just Champ.
Hi, everybody. I'm Simon. Usually playing Joseph Ashbeaker, but just Simon.
So, as always on After Dark, you can see the chat scrolling over here on the right hand side of the screen. So, we will be accepting questions from our viewers as we go, and you can direct them to a specific player, you can direct them to the pack as a whole, and at an appropriate moment, I will go ahead and ask the question on your behalf. Also, if you want to be entered into that giveaway, you can type it anytime throughout the entire stream, and we will announce the winner of that dice bag at the end of the stream. All you have to do is put in hashtag crafty. But let's get into the conversation. So, when I had proposed the idea of bringing in a werewolf table with the revamp, I knew I needed a group of players that I had previously worked with, a group of players that I trusted, and a group of players who would be willing to kind of stumble through a very brand new system and splat. It had just been released maybe a couple of months before the game kicked off, so there wasn't a lot of knowledge about it. It had still been, we hadn't even had a chance to do it. We were starting to play test it. So, my first question that I will ask to all of you is what appealed to you about the idea of playtesting in this game? What appealed to you about Werewolf? What appealed to you about being the first ever Werewolf table in St. Pete by Night? Because I'm sure there's a lot of pressure that comes with that and a lot of like nerves. But like, what really called to you about taking on this task? Preston, we'll start with you.
Um, I really enjoyed Werewolves even from a kid. When I first saw the movie Van Helsing, that kind of like set the tone of where my love for werewolves really came. I joined St. Pete's, the whole vampire aspect, with the whole TikToks and things you were doing. But when the idea of werewolf came up and I was propositioned by you and then dragged through it by Champ, they're like, hey, we're doing this. um that was really cool, and being a front runner for first table was really cool, and I knew that we're gonna have some hiccups along the road. That's a whole new system. The aspect from vampire to werewolf does have its overall differences. There's minor similarities, but it is a different game in itself. But I was overall really excited when Werewolf first got released, and I was looking to play for it. But being a front runner in one of the first tables is really exciting.
Champ, how about you?
Well, I had the unique perspective of hearing about it and wanting to potentially be a mod on the server to help with Werewolf. So when the book came out, I got it. You know this, but the viewers don't. We
Right.
sat and we read every night, went through the book together. And I fell in love with it. I thought it was so cool because I was not interested. I know there were so many people on the server that were like, "Oh, when Werewolf comes out, like I'm doing it," and I'm like, "I like vampire, like I'm okay." But I read it and I was like, "This is for me. I love this." And I was like, "Can I play test? Can I be a part of it?" And you're like, and that's how it happened. And then I dragged everybody out with me to play.
Well, and for those who aren't aware, Champ is obviously my bestest friend in the whole world. She is my boon companion, and a lot of the projects that I undertake, she is one of my biggest supporters and teammates in those projects. And actually, I do recall that the book had come out. We were like, we need to get into this book. We need to start putting this together. But I was driving across the country, and so she was sweet enough and wonderful enough to read to me while I was driving during that time, so that we could just kind of get the information going and get it kind of working in our heads. And so I'm super, super duper grateful for that, because it really did give an advantage going forward. And she's one of those people who has a steel trap. You're one of those people that has a steel trap of a mind, so that when I forget things, she's almost always there to follow up and help me out or clarify some things if in case I'm losing something. Probably the 10 years age difference is helping with that too. But yeah, so Simon, how about you? You are one of the more experienced World of Darkness players in the server as a whole, I would dare say, as most of the people who joined had little to no experience with World of Darkness. So you had encountered the World of Darkness, but decided to sign up for this. Why?
I was waiting for Werewolf. From the moment V5 came out, I was excited for all the other splats. My first World of Darkness game was Vampire, but very soon after we got into a Werewolf game. Actually, it was a Changing Breeds game. But we went from Vampires to Shifters almost immediately. Back when I was playing 20 years ago in college. So I was waiting for it. I was excited for it. And then when I started seeing the changes they were making and some of the hints that were coming out, I was really excited to see how they were going to update Werewolf mechanically, but also culturally and in the lore. I'm a huge lore junkie, and I could sit for way too long just diving into lore. So seeing what lore changes were coming, I was super excited for. And the best way to get that is to be knee deep in it.
Well, and again, like it was very hard because I really wanted to pick players that I knew I could work with and trust. And so it was really I was combing through being like, who'd be even interested in this? And I know at least two of you are in other games on this server playing the vampire side as well. So I knew it was going to be double the effort to be doing vampire and werewolf at the same time. But both of you have been absolutely phenomenal. And Nori, who couldn't join us tonight, is also in a second game on the server as a vampire. But because I've worked with her, I trusted her, and I saw chemistry amongst the four of you, I knew it would make a really, really good pack. So our first question from the chat comes from Jay, Hugo Boss X8, a regular here on After Dark, which I'm so happy to see. They say, I have a question. What was the most surprising thing about Werewolf that you have come across, lore-wise or mechanically? So we'll start with Preston on this.
It was all kind of a shock. Well, I started reading the wrong book, so that was on me.
Yeah,
So
the
that
20th
really-
anniversary book probably was a shock when you were used to 5th
Absolutely.
edition mechanics.
I was like, wow, that's a big dice pool. Sweet. But
This seems really overpowered. This isn't going to balance at
Yeah.
all.
some of these totems are ridiculous. But overall, the lore itself, I like the camaraderie as far as how packs work in Werewolf. Vampire, you have your the overall clan that you're a part of. You have your different sects, but you're more of an individual as far as your drive goes for a vampire. Where with Werewolf, it very much is like, hey, we'll help you because you being better helps us to get us to our end goal. So let us take care of you, which was a huge difference from when we were playing vampire and still playing vampire. Very self-centered, egotistical is what vampires are, where werewolf is very much the culture, the pack. How can we benefit us to benefit everyone?
One of the yeah, one of I'm glad you brought that up because one of the things that I love about the World of Darkness is that each individual splat has kind of a different perspective. So vampire is the most selfish splat. It's all about self. It's all about advancing your own ambitions, your own goals, your own desires, grasping for power while keeping the beast at bay and maintaining humanity. It's a very manipulative, kind of game. Whereas Werewolf is very selfless. Like, yes, you can play a selfish character. Yes, you can still have those same kind of qualities, but you really are fighting for something beyond yourself. You're fighting for Gaia. You're fighting to save the planet. You're fighting to restore balance to the spiritual realm and all this sort of stuff. It's not as much about you because as a guru, you're a soldier that is probably going to die. You're fighting a war you're never going to see the victory of. You hope to, but in reality, you probably know that this is an endless fight that you are just going to end up sacrificing yourself to. So it does require a very strong shift in perspective and mind and gameplay, and it does really endorse like working together as a pack. Yes, you have coteries and vampire, and yes, there is some teamwork, but it's teamwork for very selfish motivations. Like, I need to look good so that the prince recognizes it and gives me the position, upgrade that I need or whatever, and I'll screw over my fellow vampires if I have to do that. Whereas in Werewolf, it's like you really have to take the strengths of everybody and overcome any weaknesses the others may have. So I'm really really glad you brought it up because it is a very big kind of difference between the two systems, even though they're all in the same setting.
Right.
Yeah. Any other further thoughts on that?
That was pretty much it. Also, the lore of Werewolf is really cool. I recommend everyone go into and read about it, of all the different auspices and the different werewolves. It's really good. Everyone should just go read it. It's amazing.
It's a very very good book, a very good read, and a very good system. So Champ, what what surprised you about Werewolf, whether lore wise or mechanically?
I think my biggest surprise, and it does have to do a little bit with bias, I thought going into Werewolf, which is one of the reasons why I didn't want to play it starting off, was very combat heavy, very like just fighty, fight through everything. And that's not really my style. You'll almost never see me build like a combat character. I just don't. It's not for me. So I was really surprised that there's a lot more nuance to it, and there's a lot more that goes into it than just fight your way through, ghosts and and other werewolves and vampires. There's so much more to it, and it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And Simon, as our experienced World of Darkness aficionado, maybe you can speak more to the lore side of it as well as anything mechanically that may have surprised you. But like what surprised you most about this kind of 5th edition version?
The big jump, the biggest thing I've seen jumping into fifth ed, there's some minor lore changes to just update to 2023, 2024, but really it's Harano and Hoglosk. They talked about Harano in old editions, but the introduction of Hoglosk and losing yourself the other way was fascinating. The fact that we lose an entire group of werewolves to Hoglosk was a great way for them to write out some problematic issues. But even just you introducing Ryder from the get-go to show us the other side, and the fact that you brought in one of each to show us that was really, really a great way to explore it and to see the differences, because that was kind of the assumption in the past. Like you just go nuts when you need to go nuts. But losing yourself in that was a really cool addition, and I was really surprised that the mechanical level they put into it, the detail they put into how to get there, and the way that like it gets harder to get, like the whole mechanic of it's really cool. Better than the past where it's like, oh yeah, you can get depressed, and that's Harano. We don't really. It's a lot better fleshed out here.
Yeah, oh it absolutely is. And I love the kind of scales of it because you can develop both at the same time and it's like which one's going to get you first. Like the loss of humanity for vampires is kind of just a straight downward descent. Like you are going to lose humanity throughout playing vampire the longer you do. It's almost impossible to maintain your humanity forever. Whereas in this, it's like, well, am I going to succumb to Harano? Am I going to succumb to Hoglosk? Or am I just going to die at some point? Like, one of those, there's more options of how you could lose your character or lose, control of your character throughout this system. They've added more stakes to it, I think, that are very, very heavy.
Yeah, and they've added the ability to trade. Like if you notice you're getting too far in Harano, there is a mechanic to like turn it into Hoglosk and get a little angry about it. And so you can sit there and go like down to 4 and 4 and just wait to see what happens next. Like you can play that game. It's really cool to be able to balance that out.
Absolutely. So we've got a question from Double Magus who asks, does playing as a werewolf feel particularly different to playing the other games? And since the two of you at least only have experience with Vampire, only have experience with World of Darkness through St. Pete by Night, and have had no other kind of experience with it before then, what was different about switching to Werewolf other than what Preston had mentioned with like the team aspect and the more selfless behavior? Like what was does it feel different switching between the two games? Preston, we'll start with you.
Yeah, it's a whole different mindset itself. The vampires are these monsters that feed off the living or dead, depending on if you feeding type. We'll get into that later. But the vampires itself, the mechanics of it are different as far as you have your rouse checks and stuff that you can do. But with werewolf, you also have your blood surge. But with werewolf, you have your rage. And if you lose that rage, the wolf is gone. Like you can't do any of your fun stuff anymore until you either howl at the moon or you gain a rage some other way. And that kind of dynamic is with vampire, it's kind of like a safety net. Like I have ways I could get out of different situations, but if I lose the wolf, I'm just a guy. Well, in my case, I'm just a wolf. Like I can't help in this situation. And
Not to
so
the
that
same, yeah, not to the same level.
yeah, so that whole mindset of I don't really have that cushion anymore. I got to be a little bit more tactical about what I want to do for my next step. I'm thinking instead of like 4 or 5 steps ahead, I have to think, all right, if I do this, how far ahead do I need to think that's going to affect the pack itself? Because if I go down as the Arun and we're in a combat situation, that puts a big hindrance on everybody else. Just like if we were doing something as far as needing to talk our way out of something, Champ's having to think 20 steps ahead because one, she's leader, and two, she does all the talking. So she's playing the hard game of chess.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting that in Vampire, you're trying to kind of suppress that side of you, that like rage-fueled, beastly urge side of you. Whereas in Werewolf, you kind of have to keep propping it up. You have to keep a certain amount of aggression and a certain amount of like that primal urge in you, or else, like you said, you will lose it altogether, and that'll put you in a completely different state. So it's a weird kind of dichotomy between the two games of like, no, I have to keep this at bay, whereas this is like, I have to keep it at bay because I can't let it get out of control, but also I need to have a certain amount of it still going to keep
Balance.
me, yeah, like to keep me up and capable. Champ, how about you?
Yeah. I think the difference for me, number one, I've never played in a vampire coterie game before. It's not something I've done. So let's say the first iteration that we had, it was you had to carve out your own story, and you still do in Werewolf, but there's like this camaraderie, and there's a goal, there's a unified goal that everybody is going for. So it's easier to make those connections and to have those kind of convictions and motivations for what you want within that story. That's the big difference that I've seen.
Yeah. Simon.
So I'll go at this from getting into my character's head. And this may be just a me thing, but when I play a vampire, I normally take like an aspect of a personality trait and amplify it. As vampires get older and they get less and less humane, there's normally one trait that comes out. Each clan kind of has that, whether it's the force of personality from a Toreador or perception and insanity for a Malkavian. They kind of have this one thing that builds up, and they're kind of focused on that, and they become this distilled version of it. Where with werewolf, when I step into a werewolf's head, I have to take into account so much more. You take a human and then you're adding to it. Instead of heightening a single aspect and taking everything else away, you're adding to it this knowledge, this gnosis um of like the spiritual world and of that beast inside, and you're not just shutting down everything else, you're turning on other things. So it's almost like playing a werewolf is opening yourself up to more aspects and more perspectives, where for me, for vampire, I can like close other things off and focus.
I think one of the beautiful things about World of Darkness is there's enough differences to make it unique, but they keep several things or several elements very consistent, which makes it feel comfortable and familiar. They don't change so much that it's just a completely different game. So, for example, there's the traditions in Vampire. Well, there's the litany in Werewolf. There's the masquerade in Vampire. Well, there's the fact that werewolves can't just be walking the street acting like werewolves, all the time. They have these consistent strands, and it even goes down to the tribes versus the clans. You got your Silverfangs and your Ventru. You got your Black Furies and your Bruja. They keep this kind of ability to find something connecting the threads between the two that, again, it feels comfortable. It feels familiar enough that you just have to make some subtle adjustments. Even vampires are predators. Well, in a way, so are werewolves, but what they're after isn't the same thing. It just shifts whatever the target or the prey is, but the predator is still very much there. The monster is still very much there. It's just kind of refocusing what direction you're taking it in. So Izumi asks, would you recommend a beginner playing werewolf? Preston.
Like a new to World of Darkness overall, I feel like starting out in Vampire would be helpful. Just kind of understanding the mechanics a little bit, just because there are some things about Werewolf that are slightly different as far as that goes. But it also comes down to your ST. If your ST is all right with you and they're all right with the little bit of hand holding that's going to be needed because you're new to World of Darkness, so all this stuff's going to be different. I feel like you could with the right table. It really comes down to your ST. If they're totally cool with, like, I've never played, but I want to play Werewolf. It's just a lot that's going to have to be taught, and they have to slow down a lot to go over each thing within it.
Yeah. Champ.
I have an opposite perspective. I think werewolf is actually much easier to learn than vampire because there's not a whole bunch of lore attached to it. Like there's already this predetermined lore with vampire. When they brought Werewolf 5th edition in, they took all the lore away. They were like, this is gone. We're starting from scratch, which makes it so much easier to not have to figure out every like history of like each clan and know all of these things to fit in that world. You can just kind of hop in and read the book and you know everything. So I think it's actually a little bit easier to start off with werewolf.
Simon.
From a purely mechanical perspective, I think there's more to manage, more buttons and to watch in Werewolf. I burn through willpower way faster. Now, granted, I'm also Theurge, but you can burn through willpower way faster in Werewolf than you can in Vampire, unless you're like a even social. You're still burning through a ton. I think there's more things on your sheet you need to keep track of for Werewolf. So mechanically, I think it's a little bit more complicated than Vampire. Honestly, I'd go Hunter, Vampire, Werewolf for mechanics. Lore-wise, they did simplify a ton. There's still some deep lore hidden behind it, but you don't know how much of it's still valid considering how big the lore changes were. But yeah, if you have a good table and you have a good ST, absolutely go for it. I mean, I don't see any reason why not. Just realize that you're going to be watching more things. Your health boxes are going to change drastically. You're going to be burning through willpower if you are a combat monster just by fighting. Like, there's a lot to manage, but with some patience, you can totally do it.
So I'm of the perspective that there is no bad entry point into the World of Darkness. You could enter through Hunter, you could enter through Vampire, and you could enter through Werewolf, and it would be acceptable no matter what. I think it depends on what type of person you are. If you're a person who's willing to get invested and do the research and do the homework and really look at it and not just be like, oh, they like to fight, so I'm going to pick this tribe, without like picking up on any of the other subtleties of the details. If you're willing to do the homework, there's no wrong entry point. I think the best way to learn is by doing. If you want to try something, just go try it. Don't let the system intimidate you. Don't let the lore intimidate you. Don't, like, just jump in and figure it out and go. Like, there's no technically wrong way to play any game. You can play any game however you want to. It says it in every single rule book of every single game ever written, that these are their advised rules, and you can do whatever you want. That their lore is what they've written, but it's just a suggestion. You can take it and alter it however you want to. I think that mechanically speaking, the best place to enter is Vampire, because they took the rules that they had set up for Vampire and adapted them for Hunter. And then Hunter kind of introduces you early on to some of the mechanics that they were going to bring into Werewolf. So I think going through the stages of release shows a plan and an intuition that they had when they were releasing the systems one after another in the way that they did. They released them the way they did for a reason. So Vampire is a good kind of basis introduction to this, 5 hunger, 5 desperation, 5 rage system that they're creating. Then, Hunter complicates it a little bit by taking some new things into the mix. And then Werewolf takes some of the stuff from Hunter and Vampire both and then adds even more new stuff into the mix. And I've said this a lot. I think Werewolf is testing out some mechanics that they're going to bring in for Mage, with the idea of gifts and rights and everything like that. It seems like they're kind of setting the groundwork and play testing on a smaller scale what they want to do for Mage. So I think any game, like I said, is fit for a beginner, but I think that mechanically speaking, Vampire's the best access point, and then moving on from there into Werewolf would be the way to go, as far as beginners are concerned. So I know we had another question. Okay. Anonymous81 asks, what are you looking forward to exploring further in Werewolf? Also, what are you looking forward to in Rage Across Tampa? So we'll break that up into 2 separate questions because I am interested to hear about what you're looking forward to in this specific story. But what are you looking forward to exploring further in Werewolf? Let's start with that. Preston.
The whole lupus born thing is a lot of fun. Just learning and going through as that I'm having a lot of fun with is so the other thing I'm looking forward to is just growing from that, from being a wolf to being a werewolf. Want to see where it goes because most of the time I can kind of see how things are going, but Kent's kept the cards pretty close to his chest as far as what's upcoming. So I don't know what's happening, and that's one of my favorite parts about this game is I don't know what's happening. So the constant of trying to figure out what is next for Aiden is something that keeps my mind engaged for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for Werewolf specifically, I am looking forward to exploring the Umbra more and how it looks and how it interacts within the world and opposite of the world and stuff like that, because that's a lot I don't know about. So I'm really excited to learn more about that.
Simon.
I'm excited to look into the honor system, the renown system, I should say, and how that's going to run, the mechanics of it. We haven't done a ton with that yet as we grow, and it'll take a while for us to start building more renown. But the renown system in old systems was very codified and very, very strict. So I'll be interested to see how it plays out in 5th edition as we move up in renown and make names for ourselves. That's going to be fun to watch.
Absolutely. So talking about kind of St. Pete by Night, this is the server, the way we've set up the game. We're in the 2nd iteration, the revamp, if you will, of the game. But all of you have kind of been around, have been around really since day 1, since we really started the 1st iteration of the game. So you've seen the evolution of St. Pete by Night and how we play this game and how this server operates. And I'm lucky enough to have all 3 of you on the mod team as well, so you really get to see both in front of and behind the scenes of how this all develops. What are your feelings about the change between the way we used to play the game and how we play the game now? And what is it like through the lens of Werewolf? Like, do you think Werewolf would have worked really well in the 1st iteration, or does it work better in the revamped iteration as a whole? Preston, go ahead.
So the 1st iteration was great. The whole open RP thing, going out and doing different things. It made the world feel very much alive as far as these are things that are happening in real time. These are people talking at this point. The revamp itself took that, but kind of broke it up so it's easier to manage itself because there were 90 people playing. And that is a lot for 1 or even the 3, 4 at one point people to try and maintain. But now we have 6 STs?
6 or 7, yeah.
Yeah, that all have multiple code within the same world. So everything's been broken down. I think it works really well. Now, as far as Werewolf working out in the first edition, I'd say, or first rendition, I'd say no. One, we had things going on in Tampa with the court going on over there. So that would have pulled a lot of people and the attention going there. It wouldn't have been as focused to St. Pete. I think the first edition really helped build that foundation that was needed. And if we had a lot of things going on over in Tampa, it would have been spread really thin and that foundation would no longer be built. With that, we had the court was made, and now it's an established part of the lore of St. Pete because of that first edition. So yeah, I would say no. Werewolf would not have worked very well in the first rendition.
Fair enough. Champ.
Simple answer. No, I don't think it would have worked in the first rendition of what we were doing. The werewolves and the vampires mingling would have gotten really like muddied, I think. So that would have done disservice for people who were wanting to play werewolf, especially with it being so new. But in this iteration, I think it works great. I really enjoy having like small packs that can really intermingle with each other. And who knows if there will be intermingling when other games start up inevitably. But I think establishing it this way definitely made it better.
Simon.
I think the only splat that could have worked the way our first iteration worked was vampire. The fact that vampires are so individual, having individual stories that interact with each other worked. But werewolf is such a pack-driven story. It is built for 4 to 5 to 6 people, usually of different moon phases, different auspices, working together. I don't think if we would have had werewolves in that first edition, they would have ended up being a coterie, a pack running together and doing all the stuff together. It would have turned into this. Also, balance-wise, we saw the terrifying mix of hunter and vampire in that first go with that drone jockey. And I could only imagine a well-placed coterie or a well-placed pack, well-built pack, just mowing down people. Either way, depending on who got the jump and who had the forethought. I don't think the balance would have worked well. I think it would have been a mess. The PvP would have been inevitable. And that's something we were able to avoid in the first iteration pretty well. So yeah, absolutely needs to be small tables for werewolf.
Yeah, and adding on to that, I think that while there are politics in both, I think Vampire is a much more politically and socially focused game. I think that there is a much more dynamic on sect politics. I think there's a bigger dynamic on clan politics, on city politics. It's just a social game. It's a much more social game than Werewolf is. Well, like again, Werewolf does have their own politics in septs and in packs and intersect politics or intercept politics. But overall, I think that Werewolf they're all on the same page. All Guru are pretty much on the same page for the most part. Obviously, there are a few exceptions. But for the most part, they all want the same goal. Whereas in Vampire, there's such a mixture of goals, such a mixture of kind of motivations and driving forces. There is an opportunity to focus on yourself, your own goals, your coterie's goals, your clan's goals, your city's goals. Like, there's just so many other layers that allow for those kind of interminglings and crossovers, whereas packs are pretty much just going to move as a pack. Like, they're not going to go out and work with other packs. They're going to stay together as a group. And so I think it is kind of more divisional, and working on just the pack dynamics makes for a better story in my mind, or even just the sept dynamics without, having just all of these other rogue elements involved. And so, yeah, I agree. I don't think Werewolf would have worked as well in the first iteration. I had not even considered Werewolf when I'd come up with the first iteration. I was really just focusing solely on Vampire, and then tried to make accommodations for Hunter, was even thinking about trying to find a way to make Werewolf work. And I think that was one of the motivating factors to just scrap it and try this new dynamic, which we still have a lot of the things I loved about the first iteration with open RP and opportunities for crossover, but that not being the the sole focus or emphasis, I think, helps. I think allowing people to have the individuality and the smaller table dynamic of the game does help. So we have a message from our wonderful sponsor, Crafty Mirage, who asks, if you could play another tribe than you are now, what would it be? Preston, we'll start with you.
I like my Gale Stalkers. It mi- I
I
might
know
go
you'd had a
Glass
fondness for the Silent Striders too, though.
I did like them a lot. It'd be the Silence or the Glasswalkers are really cool. The whole uh aspect of a modern werewolf in a sense, where they're very in touch with how things work in today's world. But the Silent Striders are another really cool one that I was leaning towards. But when you, me, and Champ were all talking about when we were building this character, um, pushing it like, hey, did you look at Gale Stalkers? And like, no, this is what I want. This is perfect. But Silent Stars or the Glasswalkers is probably the route I would go. Now, the Moon, I don't know what what I'd choose next.
Right. Well, and you being from the PNW, it made sense that Gale Stalkers called to you. You know, they were originally
Yep.
the Wendigo in the older editions, and then they kind of adapted. But that whole northern wind, mountain man, kind of tundra running person, that screams you. Like that, all of the qualities of Aiden, aside the fact that he was born a wolf and you were born a human, like they scream you. So I feel like it calls to you so well, and you embody so much of it so well with your, you know, survival training and your having roughed it out in the woods by yourself for days on end. Like I feel like you can really identify with that. But I do think it would be also really cool to see you do something a little more out of the box, to see you play like a bone gnar or something of that quality would also be really cool. But Champ, what other tribe would you play if you could play another one?
Unofficially, Stargazer. Like if it was possible, absolutely would play a Stargazer, 100%. Officially, I'd probably play a Black Fury, depending on my auspice, or a Ghost Council, depending on my auspice.
Simon.
I'm so happy you said that. Stargazer is at the top of my list. One day I'll SPC a Stargazer or somewhere. But yeah, if I have to go within the Garu Nation, oh man, all of them, honestly, but probably what are they called now? Heart Wardens,
Heart Wardens.
the old Fiona. I'd probably go Heart Warden. And I would absolutely go Aaron to switch it up.
That'd be cool. So I want to take a moment here to remind our viewers of our giveaway and our sponsor before we transition to more talking about our specific story, our specific chronicle, because we talk about it before and after sessions all the time, but I think that it'd be really cool for our viewers to kind of see more about it. But our sponsor is our very own Crafty Mirage, our storyteller and partnered vendor over at Chromatic Creation US. She is so generously giving away that dice bag you see on the screen right now. That beautiful, amazing dice bag. I happen to have one of her, actually, I have three of her dice bags. And I can tell you, there's no arguing with quality, there's no arguing with care. She puts so much attention into the details. They're extremely durable, they're soft. My God, are they soft! And they hold a good number of dice. They hold your entire maximum pool for Werewolf, and they are just they're well made, they're well tailored, they're well crafted, and they're done with care. She can do custom commissions in your choice of colors and your choice of pendants. She's very communicative back and forth with putting together what you want her to put together. But that dice bag you see on the right side of your screen right there is the one she's giving away tonight, and it is amazing. They are amazing. So if you want to enter into the giveaway, all you have to do is put hashtag crafty, CRAFTY, into the chat, and you will be entered to have that dice bag shipped off to you right away. So hashtag crafty in the chat. and you will be in the running to win one of those dice bags. And just to show one off, I'm holding this dice bag right now. It comes from her. She put on all these cool charms. It's absolutely wonderful, and I don't know what I'd do without it. I also have the Al dice bag she made with the shattered mirror interior and the cool, like, rainbowy, colorful stripe. These bags are wonderful, so you will be loving it if you manage to get one of these bags. So enter with #crafty. So let's kind of go through the story of that has become Rage Across Tampa, both in and out of game. So it started with me trying to convince all of you to try this system with me, to help me play test this thing, and thankfully you were all very enthusiastic. But then we had some time because the server wasn't quite up and going yet. We didn't have streams going yet. We were still trying to get everything set up. So we put a lot of time into building this particular story, into building this particular setting. Because while I'd had some ideas in my mind of what the werewolf setting was going to look like, you guys are going to be basically helping me, and have been helping me, write the lore, writing what the setting is going to be like for those who come in, after or when new packs and new tables open up. You guys are kind of setting the framework for this. So talk me through, from your perspective, the character creation process, whether, what was your inspiration for your character? How did you feel about the way we went through character creation, and kind of all this extra time and effort we put into building these characters and this pack and this setting? Preston, it's a lot, so feel free to take your time going through it, but we'll start with you.
When we were building, or when we were starting this out, we were all kind of bouncing ideas off of each other, trying to figure out what route we wanted to take. In the previous edition, Champ and I had characters that really meshed well with each other. Both of my characters, someone didn't get killed, so that was nice. But both the characters that I had, I like playing with Champ. Champ's super fun to RP with. We wanted something that melded well together. So the three of us were kind of going through what clans and auspices were going to work. As I do enjoy my combat, we went towards Arun. And then we did bounce between several different of the tribes, trying to figure out which one. And then when we landed on Gale Stalker, that one, like you said, just kind of screamed me.
And we even bounced between editions of the book, between 20th anniversary and 5th edition. So,
Yeah, that was a rough night. But as we figured that out, one of the things that helped get the voice of Aiden was that interview that we did after we had decided the characters itself. Trying to find where the line between where a lupus born is and the human side, and making it where it's a playable character, where they're not just super dumb, but they're not pushing like I know more than I actually do. So those little conversations that we had really helped kind of create the character that is Aiden. I think that was all the points that you brought up.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Preston plays Aiden Goodspeed. He is a lupus-born werewolf, which means he started as a wolf from the jump. He's actually only, 4 or 5 years old in human time and actuality, even though he has the appearance, the appearance of an older man. So he really had one of the biggest challenges. You've had one of the biggest challenges in making your character, which was adapting this wolf persona to start and all of the aspects that come with it, and then having to get the whole human experience within the last year or so of your character's life, but also trying to take it in a fashion that isn't comical, because it's so easy to make this a comedic character, to make this an oddball, I don't understand human things, what are words, ha ha ha, math, what's that? You've done such a solid job, and I can't compliment you enough, even though I try to, about how you really carefully walk that balance, how you really do have some of the comedy, some of the kind of ignorance of someone who wouldn't have been in human society very long, but not making it the focal point of your character, not making it the most important quality of your character or the defining thing about your character. It's just this thing about him, this kind of quirky, unusual thing, but he has enough experience to pass for a human, to pass in human society. And you do that just marvelously, like just brilliantly. And we'd had so many conversations ahead of time where I was like, Preston, I'm putting a lot of effort into this game, man. I need you to take this as seriously as possible. Please don't make me regret this. Don't go peeing on stuff and being that guy. Like, and you've absolutely knocked it out of the park. You've done an incredible job, and it's a sight to behold. I really recommend anybody who is not caught up on Rage Across Tampa or hasn't even seen it for the first time, go back to the first episode and watch, especially Preston's performance as Aiden. It is top notch, and there are some laughable moments, but there are really some heartfelt moments of like, he just doesn't genuinely understand, and he doesn't know how to process what's happening, to the advanced degree that a human born human would. And so it's very fascinating, and watching him grow and change and adapt is incredible. So Champ, why don't you talk me through kind of your perspective of from being asked and agreeing to do this insane thing to, character creation and the start of the game, what your experience was like.
Yeah, like I said, I was possibly going to be a mod for when Werewolf eventually would become a thing on the server. So I started reading through the old iteration actually, and got a lot of cool ideas and a lot of interesting perspectives there. And then when the book came out and we went through all of that, I kind of a little bit got overwhelmed, and not like in a bad way, overwhelmed with like the sheer cool aspects of everything. Because when I went into it, I was like, oh, I'm gonna be a Theurge ghost council. That's what I'm gonna do. Like that's what I'm gonna do. Really, I was. And then I started reading and I was like, oh, but Ragabash is so cool. And I was like, I could do Ragabash Black Fury. And then I read more and I was like, oh, but Philodox is so cool.
There's the
And I was like,
burden of inspiration. There's too much inspiration and too many options.
exactly. And I was just like, oh, there's so many good things. And I remember I talked to you for hours about like, what do I do? This is why I like this one. This is why I like this one. I'm so stuck. What do I do? And then we kind of talked it through and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go Philodox. I think that's something I want to start with. So I built Aspen before she was Aspen. And then as we were kind of progressing through, I messaged Preston and I was like, oh, so like, what are you gonna do in the new iteration? And he's like, oh, I'm totally gonna play this Banu vampire. And I was like, that's cool, that's cool. You should play werewolf instead. And that's what you're going to do. So I pulled him
Because we
in.
were going to play vampire because you didn't want to do werewolf. Like, all right, well, I'll make a vampire. Had him made. You're like, actually.
That is pretty much what happened, but and then pulled Preston into it and got him into it, and just going over everything and figuring all of that out, and then bringing everybody else in. We all kind of talked about wanting one of each auspice and who we would, who would play what, and how we would balance each other out was also really cool conversations. And then starting to build Aspen was really fun because we were trying to find connections beforehand if we had any. So I got to work really close with Preston about Aiden and Aspen's story beforehand, and it actually turned out really beautiful, and there's a lot to it. That's slowly coming out, so watch the show, watch the sessions. And it was just so much fun, and I'm so glad I decided to do it.
Me too. Simon, let's talk about your experience, because you were kind of one of the last additions to this group, and it took a little bit of conversation, a little bit of negotiation to make this happen, because I know you had a really strong vampire concept and a group you wanted to work with. And I was kind of like, well, what if you also did this? What if I threw another mammoth task on top of that? But talk me through kind of what it was like for you from, agreeing to join the game to the game starting.
Yeah, so I did come in later in the group, and I've always been a play what the group needs kind of person. And Theurge has always been my favorite auspice, so I had no problem filling that role. It was kind of perfect, a little serendipitous. Um, so when I came in and I saw that that was a need, I was absolutely down for it. And being the kind of lore junkie who's been around, playing the person who would know things made sense. Um, this person who actually has like dots in occult and knows about the Umbra would make perfect sense for me to play. So it was a perfect match. It did take me a while to settle on tribe. I was bouncing between 3 different tribes for quite a while in my head, between Ghost Council, Children of Gaia, and I think the third one was Glasswalker, honestly, because I thought it'd be fun to play a Glasswalker Theurge. So I was bouncing around for a while there, but I found my inspiration in pulling from home. Since we were coming from other places, I figured I'd pull in here. So I dug deep into like the Appalachian folklore and that kind of thing, and started building that way. And Ghost Council made the most sense for doing that and mixing it. And a little behind the curtains thing, Grandma is my dad. Everything that I learned, that Joseph learned from Grandma, I learned from my dad. And so it's been really nice to like revisit my dad. He passed like 13 years ago. So like this has been a really nice way to homage my dad and the stuff he taught me through Grandma. So that's been a lot of fun, and it's kind of what brought that Ghost Council feel to Joseph.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I really stressed to all of you at the beginning for the viewers at home was I really wanted there to be a really strong sense of character and a sense of chemistry within the pack. I wanted us to really have a strong sense because I knew we were going to be streaming weekly, which is something we had not done on St. Pete by Night up till then. Like we'd done the Elysiums, we'd done the big gatherings, but we'd really never done a streamed coterie or pack. And so part of what took us so long to get started was us making that chemistry happen. While I think that you guys have a natural sense of chemistry, I really wanted to enforce that, and I think it's become one of the greatest strengths of the show. But something that we did, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and Preston kind of mentioned it briefly, is we did in-character interviews where it's like they were on a talk show, like, and this is going to date the hell out of me, like a Ricky Lake. Does that reference ring home with anybody? Like actually sitting there and being asked questions about your character and about your experiences, and trying to challenge you to think about elements of your character that maybe doesn't normally go into a backstory. So I found the mother of all RPG questionnaires, which you can find if you Google online, and I took questions after questions after questions from that questionnaire and started posing them to the players as their characters before we even had our first session. What did you feel about that process, and did it really help you get into the mindset, or did you learn anything about your character through that process, Preston?
Yeah, starting out, like I said, it was hard to try and find that line when some of those questions would come up. And one of the great things is when questions would come up, you tweaked them enough so I could answer as Aiden. Because there was one where it was talking about like family itself, but you adjusted it for like a pack like question, which helped me get into that character of wolf. You were born a wolf. You're a human. Talk about when you were a wolf, and that point is kind of where I get when I before we get on stream is I kind of ask myself that, just like, all right, your pack when you're a wolf, and that kind of gets me into that overall mindset as Aiden. So that question there, that huge interview that we did starting out really helped, and that's what I do before the session is when that theme song is playing, that thought goes through my head to help me get into that mindset of Aiden, and then I can maintain from that point. So no, it huge help. I recommend it for everyone to go check that out. It was an amazing experience, and hearing everyone else's answer those questions really kind of made the pack feel real. Even it was our first time actually doing that RP together.
Champ.
I absolutely loved it. I thought it was great. It helped me sit in Aspen and figure her out completely because I had a good idea of who she was. But what really helped me, because I have a lot of anxiety, was getting to know the other characters and how I would interact with the other characters. That's what really helped me get into and engaged. Like, funny story. While we were doing the interview stuff, Joseph was like, I don't trust Aspen. She talks like those, city folk. I don't like it. And so that was really fun to like know that that was going to be something going in, kind of like a distrust, and being able to like build on to that as character development between us two. So yeah, it really helped inform what we were going into as an established, knowing each other, not quite a pact, but at least having interactions with each other.
Simon.
You can ask anyone from my vampire coterie. I loved it so much. I immediately went into our coterie chat and said, "Hey, our next session, we're doing this." Like, I jumped on it. It was a blast. It built a ton of Joseph's character. I think Grandma showed up in those questions.
Mm-hmm.
She popped up like 3 or 4 questions down. It popped in my head, and that just built it. And yes, I actually just opened it and looked through the questions again, and at the very bottom was who was most likely to betray you, and it was, and I guessed Aspen, and that was great because I remember we're 3 sessions in, and that kind of switched. You could see that moment happen on camera, where the trust started happening and the reassurance built, and that was a really good moment. But that came from that session 0 interview. That was a great option. Every table should do that, as well as all the other normal session 0 safety tools and stuff. After you get that stuff done, jump into those questions. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I absolutely adore it, and I recommend it to any storytellers, new, old, otherwise. And it doesn't even just have to be World of Darkness. It doesn't just have to be werewolf or vampire. You could use it in D&D. You could use it in Call of Cthulhu. Like, I just really think that, understandably, there are a lot of kinks to work out to getting into character. You have to detach from your current mindset. You have to put yourself in the shoes of someone else. And for certain people, it's easy. They can just do it. Like actors, people with a theater background, they've done that kind of work. And so they have that kind of experience to just be, okay, I'm inhabiting this character now. But for, I think, most people, there is an adjustment period. There is an ironing out what's their voice, what's their posture, how am I going to portray them, what am I thinking about, what are they thinking about during sessions, and so I really, really wanted to figure out and enforce that. So I recommend everybody do it. And there's hundreds of RPG questionnaires out there. There's hundreds of resources you can use. But again, look up the mother of all RPG questionnaires. It's got probably like 600 questions on it, or some ridiculous amount of questions over a variety of categories. And it's a really kind of good, just gear up, just a good kind of mindset tool, because, you put a lot of the basics into a backstory. You put, why am I here? Who am I? Like, what's my type? Blah, blah, blah. You get some of the vague details, but there are a lot of things that, especially in RP heavy games or improv heavy games, that might come up that you might not think about. And so having those answers primed and ready could really have you have a much more fulfilling role-playing experience, I think. St. Petersburg by Night is brought to you through collaborations with our partnered vendors: Wolfpack Dice, Ember Fox Dice, Dragon Ink Dice, Bear of the Bard, Champs Tramps, Panchi Artista, and Chromatic Creations. Links to our partner vendors, as well as our Twitch and YouTube channels, can be found on our website, stpetbynight.com. The official theme song for St. Petersburg by Night is Vampire by Faith and Failure. You can find them at faithandfailure.com. You can follow SPbN on all socials with the hashtag StPeteByNight. If you wish to support our program, you can do so at ko-fi.com/StPeteByNight to help keep the stories rolling. So, the game starts. We have our first few sessions and we work out some of the technical issues and frames and music and all kinds of stuff as we go. But the story starts to take shape. The story of this pack having to inherit what was left behind, having heard the call that brings them from all over the country together to inherit the difficulties of a kind of collapsed Guru Nation in Florida, that the Guru Nation had little to no presence in Florida, and the kind of weight of that mammoth task. Now, Preston and Champ, you had connected characters coming into the game, so you kind of already had a dynamic and a foundation laid, but Simon and Nori kind of were solo, and we'd attached kind of these loose connections between you guys, but there wasn't the same kind of solidified connection. So talk me through what it felt like as the pack came together, as the story took shape, and as you kind of started to see the direction you were going on. What were you feeling as a player kind of watching this all unfold? Preston.
It was interesting because the characters are kind of held back, and trying to gain trust is difficult, especially when you're in a place where you have no real support and don't know really why you're here. But seeing everything kind of unfold the way it did, the trust, it wasn't just like, all right, we're going to trust each other because we're werewolves. It was a progression, because there were times where especially and he doesn't trust people. That's because his lupus born. He has a hard time gaining that. But Joseph and Jester have grown on him, and now he sees them as part of his pack and would do anything for them. But if it was 2-3 sessions in, no, he had just been like, that sucks. I got Aspen. That's all I really need. Now it's a totally different mindset, and that's really cool to see it as a player, to watch this progression, and not just from my side, but seeing all the other characters slowly revealing what they have in their hand, like slowly giving pieces of the backstory and then adding to the overall story of Rage Across Tampa is a really exciting thing to be able to see, especially as a player.
Champ.
That's basically a lot of what I was gonna say. Much like Preston, my character didn't trust anybody, didn't even want to be part of a pack. Really, she was just happy to be alone and by herself, because she was like, this werewolf stuff, I don't get it. So she immediately went in and was untrusting of all of them. Like Artie, for example, she was like, who's this little weirdo? And now they have a great relationship.
That's one way to put it.
You know, if you don't know, watch the show. But yeah, it was interesting watching everybody kind of like take little steps in, except for Joseph, which I always thought was really interesting. We were all kind of like dipping our toes into the water, and he's like, no, we're doing this. This is what we're doing. And kind of like grouped us all together. And he's like, whether you like it or not, we're family. So we all had to do that. And it was just really interesting, the progression from like those first couple of sessions to now, and how much everybody has started to trust each other and really become like the pack mentality.
Simon.
So we kind of hinted at it with Preston and Champ. Because you guys had a previous dynamic, you started building your characters together, and I always played kind of antisocial characters. I played a very antisocial Nos in the first iteration, and then I jumped to Hunter, so I really didn't have a chance to play with the rest of the table that much. So I looked at this separate kind of different experience for Joseph as a way to explore and get into the table with, out of character as well. So I wanted Joseph to feel a little alone, but realize we have to do this and jump in. So in that way, where Joseph was like, no, we're a pack, we have to be. That was Simon saying, hey, we're a table, we have to be. So I took that and put it into Joseph for that. And it was the same, like, and you see it later about halfway through, if you go back and rewatch, where he actually breaks down with Eliza and realizes how lonely it is to be the theurge and be the odd one. That was a lot of where I started coming in, not playing with the characters. But you guys made it so easy to jump in, and like immediately felt like Simon immediately felt like he was welcome. Well, Joseph was like, I gotta push this.
So speaking of Eliza and Artie, there are kind of three uniquely individual NPCs in this story, and I'm not a big fan of PNPCs. I'm not a big fan of like having an NPC in the party that I'm basically playing through. I know a lot of people like to do that, but when we were early on, we knew that we wanted this to be a teaching game. We wanted to cover as many elements of the game as possible because we were going to be kind of, at least as far as I'm aware, one of the first groups delving into this on some sort of like broadcast stage. Like the game was still very fresh, very new, and especially in the St. Pete community, very few people had heard of it. I mean, almost nobody heard of Vampire when the server started, so Werewolf was like 10 steps beyond that. So we as a group created Artie, and then we introduced the elements of Eliza and Ryder. So I kind of want to hear your thoughts. This isn't about ego or puffing me up or anything like that, but your thoughts about the NPCs and what you like and dislike about both of them, all three of them. So Preston, go ahead.
So, all right, we'll start with Artie because he love Artie. Starting out, Aiden had his connection with Artie, and has been brought up briefly. I won't get into too much about story, but has a history with Artie going way back. He does sometimes. Aiden gets really frustrated, and Preston gets frustrated with Artie about the whole devil's advocate thing. He's like, "All right, we're going this way, like perfect," but it's like, "Shut up! You already said we're going this way. Stop." But no, it's perfectly played out as the character should be, and that's the beautiful part of it, because that is a Ragabash. They're like, here's this option. It's great. Perfect, we'll do that. But this, like, no, stop. And I love that aspect. It's super fun. It does irk me as a player sometimes, because I'm in the Aiden's headspace where one track, you have 20 going. Pick a one. Eliza, she is starting out was very interesting, because I was still new to Werewolf, and this person who is so lost, like, I don't know how we're going to bring it back. And then this idea of the tier came up, like, are we sure we're making the right choice? And then there was Ryder, and with the whole blowing stuff up and then blaming, and then us taking the blame, by us meaning Jester's affiliations took it. Yeah, he's like, no, fuck this guy. But Ryder overall, as a player, I like Ryder a lot. The Red Talons are a really cool tribe. The whole mental state of them, and him just being so far gone and not even seeing humans as humans anymore. They're just lambs to the slaughter. They're just in my way. It's just super cool to see. And Eliza now, great asset. Starting out, I was like, this is a waste of time. But Star is my favorite NPC that you have, though.
Star, yes. Champ, go ahead.
Okay, I'll talk about it from me as a player and character aspect. I really enjoy that all of them have something to teach the viewer and something to teach our characters. So for me specifically, starting with Artie. Artie was a little weirdo pain in my ass that I was like, why are you here? I'm used to doing things a certain way and you do them the opposite, and I don't like that. That challenges me. I don't like it. And throughout the sessions and throughout the story, that has definitely changed. And he's become one of the closest people to Aspen. So I really like that dynamic, because that taught her something as well. Eliza, I love Eliza. She's actually, like, I'm partial to Eliza. And I really like that struggle that she had, where it's almost like she wanted to, but she couldn't put herself out there again. And that really spoke to something, especially with my character, of that, like, I'm supposed to be helping this person, but I also feel the same way. So I kind of resent it, but I also want to redeem it because in some way that helps me too. So I really enjoyed that. And then writer. Uh, I like Ryder as a character. I think there's a lot of nuance to him, and I think it makes sense why he is the way he is and how he's gone that far, especially like being a lonely person and feeling like this is the only way to do it because there's no one else. There's no one else to take that up, so you have to. It almost feels like. My character specifically has very mixed feelings about Ryder. She does not like him. She thinks he's pompous and a pain in the ass. But she also has learned a lot from like Joseph specifically about everybody deserves to do better and be better. And she really takes that to heart when people tell her that because that was something she struggled with. So now seeing Ryder, even though she really just dislikes him so much, she's like, but I have to. Like it's not pick and choose, it's everyone, it's everything. So I have to. So she's in that space now. So I really like how they've all had an impact on my character and how they've taught mechanics and even like lore. It's really cool.
Simon.
I really like that Artie is there, but he's not. He's there when we need him to be there, but you do a good job of like keeping him just on the fringe. And you can see that there's that a little bit of knowledge between the three of them, and that's kind of, you can see that there's an in-character reason why. It's not just you wanting to give us a spotlight, which we all appreciate. But I like that's the dynamic, and that he is there. Although he's a member of our pack, he's also there kind of separate. He's also hilarious. And I do love a good ragabash, so that's fun. When it comes to Eliza and Ryder, Joseph has found a real affinity and for Eliza, obviously being Theurge's, but there's some memory there. There's some, you remind me of Grandma there for Joseph with Eliza, and that's fun to explore, and it's why he's going to basically be at that trailer all the time. When it comes to Ryder, I was actually, as a player, initially shocked that Ryder was fully lost, because I've seen the brutality of old World of Darkness werewolves, of like Aiden getting hurt during their first fight. In Simon's head was like, 2 errands, it happens, not really catching that little nuance there. And then when it hit me later, I'm like, oh, like it was a really good moment for me to be like, oh, that's where it is. It was a nice little surprise, because I was fully expecting, a little bit of bloodshed during that initial test. But I do like that dynamic. I like that somehow Joseph has completely turned on Ryder and is fighting against, where Joseph is here, have some tea, calm down, relax. Joseph has become like vehemently against Ryder doing anything with us. And that kind of shift in dynamic was really cool to see. And I don't even know why it happened, but Joseph does not like him.
Yeah, I was very interested because there were certain NPCs. Okay, well, going backwards, I wanted all 3 NPCs to be examples of different parts of the werewolf experience. Obviously, Eliza was going to represent Hirano, but also represent the Stargazers, because I know Stargazers are popular, even though they're not really, well embodied anymore. I wanted her to represent the kind of like loss, the detachment, the tragedy of the werewolf condition, of, being a part of a losing fight for too long. I wanted her to represent a little bit of the depression that comes from fighting a war that you're losing, a war that never ends, that you're losing, and all of the loss that comes with it. I wanted Ryder to obviously represent the other side, someone who never knows when the war is lost and won't consider it lost until they're dead. Somebody who will fight to the very end, but also has lost the meaning behind the fight, what the fight is for, that it's not just a war anymore, that all of the loss he experienced, all of the pain and a heartbreak he experienced just made him lose sight of what the point of the fight was in the first place. That it was, for a purpose, for a reason, that it wasn't just about the fight anymore. And Hoglosk, obviously. And then Artie, I wanted to be relatable but experienced. I wanted him to take a kind of like innocent mentor, but also be learning as you guys are learning too, because I went with him being, having never really been a fully fledged part of the Garou Nation, through him staying in Tampa but changing after the nation had left, and kind of having to figure this out on his own. I wanted him to be a therapist in a lot of ways, somebody that everybody in the party could talk to, the glue that holds the party together without having to be party leader. I wanted him to be the one who does bring up the benefit of the doubt and the opposite side of things, because I knew I was gonna have him be a ragabash since all the other things had been picked. He needed to be the voice of like, yeah, but there's also the other side, and yeah, to fill in the gaps that the party had left open. And I think that it's worked very nicely, and I think that they are very, very different characters, or at least I try really hard to make them very different characters. And yeah, I really do enjoy how the party has embraced them in different ways. I 100% thought Ryder was going to be a honeypot for Aiden and Jester. I thought they were going to see Ryder and be like, that's the guy. Like, he's the one who knows what's going on. He kicks ass. He does stuff. Eliza's a lost cause. She's just an old bat in a trailer. Like, whatever, forget her. I really thought there was going to be more conflict in the party about Ryder, and that some people were going to be like, yeah, he's brutal, but like he gets his shit done and he's still fighting. Eliza's not fighting. Like, so it was very interesting to see how that didn't end up being the case. And for those who are catching up, how it's actually gone a different way, which could lead to some interesting pack dynamics and pack issues in the future, as those who I thought wouldn't like Ryder, or at least one, are starting to turn a page. So that's been a very, very interesting kind of way that the story has gone that I haven't predicted, which is why I love TTRPGs as a whole. So, what are the strengths of your fellow players? So I'd like you to go through everyone here and Nori. What do you think is their greatest strength that they bring to the game? Not to the group, obviously, based off of auspices and tribes, but like as a player, what they bring to the game. What do you think the greatest strengths of your fellow players are? Go ahead, Preston.
Okay. All right. So starting with Champ, the very easygoing, goes with the flow really well, and is smart about how she plays her characters. Very, and then articulates what she needs very well. And that is super helpful to have that kind of person in the game, especially someone playing a social character, to be able to get their point across. Like, have dots in it, but be the person that can back up your dots. Be able to have that knowledge basis, and that is super a huge asset. Simon, his knowledge on World of Darkness is awesome. It's so helpful. The amount of stuff this guy knows, like Vampire, I've had some conversations with him. I like playing Banus. I've had conversations with Simon, and we go back and forth. It's super fun. I've had a great time experiencing how much he knows about the game, and having someone in the game that can afterwards shed light on like what just happened is amazing. Nori is one of those people that I didn't get to RP with a whole lot in the first. Even as a Bruja, my last character, he didn't socialize a whole lot, only when he had to. But she is so good on the emotional aspect of things, on giving what is her character is feeling, and being able to kind of paint that picture on where her headspace is, because we can only do so much with the words, but actually elaborating on it and giving those details is huge. And for you, Kent, you are amazing. You are just so good at storytelling. these last like 4 sessions, you've actually given me literal chills, which doesn't happen. And I don't get teary-eyed, but you got me to a point where I almost started crying. So that testament to you, because I don't fucking cry. That was really, really good. But yeah, I love this table. Everyone brings something that is unique to it, and that's why this is my favorite table to be at.
Champ, go ahead.
Yeah, so as far as players go, I'll start with Preston. Preston's just fun. He's just fun. He's so lighthearted. He just makes everything fun. Like even if you're having a bad day, he's like, no, I'm gonna make it a good day. Like you just have to. So he's just fun. And as far as the game goes, he does bring a unique perspective of like how it is to have those comedic moments and have fun with the story, but also be serious when it needs to be serious. He doesn't take it too far. And I think that's really great. And he's also just like a good cheerleader for the pack. Uh, even reluctantly, he'll still do it. Simon, I think Simon's knowledge is great. Simon, but he is so good at like bringing people together, like making sure like everybody feels heard and seen and feels like they're doing good. And he's always the first to be like, I think this was really great. And as far as in the game, he also does that. His character really makes sure like everybody's working together and doing, and like he also, much like Artie has the advice stuff, he's really good at giving the advice stuff in a way that fits specifically to each person he's talking to. He changes how he talks to people based off of who he's talking to, which really works to help everyone who's, little babies. Nori is also just like the sweetest person ever. She's a cheerleader out of game. Like she is like right there, whatever you need, she's got you, and she's gonna do it with a smile on her face and say the nicest things. As far as in game, she brings this perspective of like hard but sweet, if that makes sense. Like she knows how to kick ass, but she also like wants to like make sure everybody's okay, and when she can, it's checking on people. And obviously Kent is the storyteller of all storytellers. Uh, and he's so good at making sure everybody's having a good time and listening and teaching too. Like even when you don't know what's going on, he's a great teacher. He's so patient. He's so patient because there's sometimes I'm like, I don't know. He's like, calm down, let's figure it out. So that's always great.
I'm gonna stop blushing. Simon.
All right, we'll start with Preston. Honestly, it's his ability to find balance. Out of character, he's a fun guy to talk to and hang out with, but like even in character, that balance of the silly and the weird of having that different perspective and balancing those little himbo moments with actually kicking ass has been great to watch and to know when that kicks on and off. I've loved that balance. It's a really hard line to walk. I play a lot of Maux and talk to a lot of Maux, and that line doesn't get followed a lot. So that is spot on, and like I want to see you play a Maux for the same reason, because that balance is beautiful. For Champ, there is a deep well of emotion that comes up sometimes, and like on the spot, like crocodile tears. Like I'm sitting trying to stay in character and not lose it when Aspen loses it. That it's like super deep in there, and it's really cool to see that come out. Like sometimes I want to check on you, but I can see like, oh no, she's fine. But that's really cool to see that emotion get pulled up when you need it. And honestly, that's I'm gonna repeat what Preston said for Nori, is that ability to pull on the emotion, but it comes out different with Nori. There is that compassion, but then the passion with it, that kind of mama bear that Black Fury fits so well for Nori's playstyle. It's spot on. Then we can gush on Kent again. Kent can paint a picture so well in every session I've been with him, his ability to paint a picture and like I can just see it and like smell it. We did a one shot where we went into the basement. I could smell that basement when you were describing it. It was beautiful. That your ability to paint a scene, and then on the vampire scene, your ability to be a beast. Chilling every time. I love and hate when you get to be somebody's beast. It's great.
Yeah, I think that I couldn't be more fortunate to have such a talented group. I mean, bringing in people with experience like Nori and Simon, bringing in people who are new but so optimistic and up for anything like Preston and Champ. Like it's so incredible. And Champ's ability to cry on command, I was gonna bring that up. Like it's insane. But she gets me every single time. Even though I'm the one putting her in that position, like a part of me is like, no, I have to stop. That's my friend. Even though I know she's just so incredible at really inhabiting the moment and giving the emotions of the moment. And Simon, you make role playing a transcendental experience. Like you just have this way of talking about things and looking at things that feel like an out of body experience. It does strip away some of the emotion, but in such a good intellectual way of just like looking at it from perspectives I wouldn't even consider. And so you make a brilliant theurge from that, because like even as we talked about in the game and in the story, theurges always kind of have one foot out of reality. They have one foot in the umbra, one foot in the real world, and it's this weird balance, and describes you and explains you so well, and it's so valuable, not only for this game but just in life. Like in life I get that from you all the time, and I love it. And then Preston, you make everything fun, man. Like I can't sing your praises enough. I have fun whenever we hang out. I have fun gaming with you. I have fun, talking about serious stuff with you. And it's just, and again, you've blown my mind with the talent that you've brought to Aiden and to playing what would be one of the most challenging roles, I think, because it's so easy to go comedy. It's so easy to go over the top, like, oh, I don't know human stuff. I can pee anywhere, right? Like you don't do that. Like you do it so believably well that it doesn't become absurd. So each character has a story. Each of your characters has their own kind of personal narrative going on in this grand scheme of Rage Across Tampa, of what the group's trying to do, which is to establish the Garou Nation in an otherwise vampire and worm dominated area, a place that has been forgotten, a place that has been forsaken and kind of shoved to the side. Um, but describe to me in two or three sentences and the audience what your character's story is, or at least what you see their story being right now, personally. Preston, we'll start with you.
Their story right now is just trying to figure out what their purpose is. With everything kind of going on, they knew that the Arun thing, what that meant to be here, but now there's a whole different aspect of kin seeking, which he wasn't really taught. He doesn't have someone. He has Duncan who he can call on, but Duncan's not there. So right now he's in a sense of loss, for multiple different reasons, where he had just lost his older brother, but his mind right now is trying to understand how to move forward where he's at and what the pack needs from him.
Okay, Champ.
In 2 to 3 sentences, reluctant werewolf, reluctant leader, and understanding the weight of responsibility while also learning how to find connections with people again.
Simon.
So Joseph's story is learning how to make connections in this side of things, with so much of his upbringing and werewolf years and time being on the other side, is being able to form real connections with other types of thinkers and other types of werewolves.
Yeah. I think that the individual stories are just as profound as the overall story, if not more so. And these were stories that I didn't plan for, that have just kind of naturally taken shape. Like, I feel Aiden is a coming of age story. He's going through this journey of like not just having to become a human, but also having to grow up. Like the fun and fancy free of not being the alpha of a pack and just having to do as you're told, to being your own literal person, not just your own wolf, but your own literal person. And then also having to see what growing up entails. It means losing family. It means having to go out on your own. It means having to like adjust to all these things that in a typical wolf fashion he probably would never have to deal with to the degree that he's having to deal with now. Aspen's story, not just recovering from tragedy and loss, but having to take that and build up to something even more. Like having been knocked back on your back, flat backed, by life, not only just having to get back up again, but now having to prop everyone else up, like having to lift everyone above you and carry the weight of that while still dealing with all this personal loss and tragedy, and doing so, like you said, reluctantly. Um, Joseph's story, I think, is not just trying to come to terms with people in the real world, but just trying to actually seeing for himself how deep that spiritual well goes. Like, he had a foundation of knowledge from his grandmother, but even she only knew so much. Like, he had to take what she knew and then see what she didn't know and beyond, uh, while also still having to stay grounded, having to find roots that connect him to this world and not to just float off into space as a whole. Amazing stories. So amongst all the stories in the sessions, and we've had 14 sessions, 14 episodes at this point, which is way more than I ever thought we'd reach. What are some of your favorite moments, Preston?
That's a hard one. There's been a lot. Um, Honestly, probably my number one was Aspen, her initial change when we were in the Umbra. That whole scene was just really, really good. Like we were down on our luck, we were losing, and she literally broke the roof, a stone roof, to save our asses. That was just a really, really cool scene. I think actually my favorite arc so far has been the tier. I think that's been my favorite arc. That whole thing had so much emotion behind us going into the Umbra and having to deal with all of our patrons, and then watching all that. I'm gonna go with that was probably my favorite. The tier is my favorite.
Champ.
So favorite moments. I think my favorite moment with Aiden has to be after we saved his family. Like all of the stuff that happened afterwards. Saying goodbye to his family, all of that. My favorite Joseph scene was actually just recently him talking to grandmother Willow. I thought that was really well done, and the metaphors and stuff were so beautiful. My favorite with Nori, with Jester, I think has to be her little thing she did in the Umbra, like with her friends being in jail and all of that. I really enjoyed that part for her. My favorite was breaking the roof. I love that. That was so fun. But yeah, those are some of my favorites.
Simon.
Not to just keep repeating, but honestly, that whole Umbra trip was awesome. All of our little mini stories talking to the patrons was great, and it was great as a player to see more deeply into each of the other characters. It was really illuminating there. For Joseph, being able to voice the doubt he has and face that was really good. It's not always something he can put out there. So having that quiet moment to do that was great. I loved the fight when we first met Ryder and watching Aiden just go. That was a great moment to see. And that kind of lack of hesitation, that everyone just kick in. Let's see, for Aspen, just the last session, like the emotion that came out, that hit me hard. And for Nori, I would go back to the vignette, the Umbral test. That was huge, and it gave us a lot of insight into what she's feeling right now, and made it much more poignant to us that we need to take care of this.
So we go through a process at the end of every session, which people aren't able to see on stream, where we talk about rosebuds and thorns. And for those who don't know what rosebuds and thorns are, it's something that you really enjoyed about the session, rose, something that you're looking forward to, or something that you're like getting hints of that you want to see kind of develop and grow, which would be your buds. And thorns would be something that you would like to see improved upon, something that maybe didn't work out for the best. So we've talked a lot of wonderful things about the campaign, but I'm also one that likes to address kind of the things that require improvement head on. I don't like to, I like to be transparent about all elements of the game. And while I love the compliments, let's talk about some things that you would like to see more of, or would like to see changed, or maybe something that, you're not quite attaching to in the game. Like, it could be, I don't like how much NPC interaction there is, or I don't like, anything. What are some things that you wish were different about this campaign?
That's hard, man. At the end of sessions, I have a hard time picking it. It's usually something like my hair was in my face because the session was so good.
Or ways we can improve, even just things you'd like to see more of.
I enjoy if we could get more of what's going on in Tampa while we're there. Just kind of make the world feel more alive while we're there. Just some more descriptions on like even during the vignettes, like you heard something go on here, you happen to read this while you were out wandering, something blew across here and you end up something along those lines, just to kind of add to the immersion. If I
Okay.
had to nitpick something.
It means I gotta catch up on current affairs, because I'd have no idea what's going on in
reading.
Tampa. Okay, that's fair, champ.
Similar but a little different. I think I'd like to see more of what the vampires are doing, and I know that that's gonna come later probably, or whatever. But yeah, seeing more of like how that is affecting the real world, and like how that directly affects us. And then I also would just a little bit, because we do it, but I just love it. So a little bit more of like how spirits and stuff affect our side of the world, like with everything. Because we see like the jagglings, we see like, the corruption and stuff, but like having more interaction with that, I think would be a lot of fun.
Okay. Simon.
I'm going to be super petty and have a wish for a different mechanic. I want more toys. And I know this is the way 5th edition is built, but man, 5th edition is slow in like the toys. I would love to see more new gifts. I'd love to see us exploring that. I know that'll come with time, but man, I'm impatient. I would love to like get my hand on a few new gifts here and there, and really go at it and get shiny new toys.
Well, in good news, Werewolf has 2 books coming out this year. One of them coming out in the next month or so is a book of mini adventures, as far as I've read. So maybe there'll be some additional lore sheets and maybe some additional toys in there, but I think it's going to be primarily adventures. But the one they just announced yesterday, as of this recording, is the, I think, Corrupted or Crumbling Nation is what they're calling it. which I'm hoping is going to explain Cairn mechanics a little bit more and hopefully bring in some new gifts, new talismans, new rights, some new stuff. But that is due out in August. So I'm really looking forward. I'm glad that they have new material out. I'm hoping, at least on my end, it seems like it's being well received as a system, and hopefully they'll put out some more stuff for it. But yes, we are expecting 2 more werewolf books within this year to be arriving. So yes, I'm hoping that means that we will get some more shiny toys to bring into the werewolf game. Now I'd like to kind of ask you to look into the future. Look into the future a little bit, and what are some predictions that you would make for the story from where we're at now? What do you think is coming? Because as a storyteller, it's always great when people make some guesses. Simon, you know this firsthand from the vampire game. I love when people follow red herrings or think that they know stuff, and it ends up not being the case. What are some things that you think are coming up in the story or are kind of starting to catch on to?
I think the vampires are gonna do something here soon. The fact that we sh- we shook their web. That was part of the plan, that we were going to hit multiple places at once to create a window. Vampires are territorial. They're going to lash out. So I foresee another leech fight upcoming. And from that, I think one of the pack will have a permanent death.
Okay. Any idea as to who? Any guesses?
Aside from myself, I think it might be Joseph. I think he is one who would do the self-sacrifice and jump in front of whatever's happening to try and stop someone else in the pack from dying.
Okay. Champ.
Future, we're gonna have to deal with Bloody Mary. Like that just feels like where it's going because it's such a big adversary to the werewolves. I also think we're gonna have to deal with Pentex at some point. And I really hope this isn't the case, but I really worry that Ryder's gonna screw me.
Yeah, you've said that to me after sessions, like almost every day we've talked since the last session. You're like, I really hope this rider thing doesn't bite me in the ass. Like, I really hope this rider thing doesn't bite me. Amazing. Simon.
Yeah, I think once we fully get the cairn ready and that kind of umbral beacon goes out, someone's gonna see it. Maybe a blood sorcerer somewhere in the vampires is gonna see it. Someone's gonna notice it. I think that's gonna be the beacon that really brings the vampires down on us. I'm hoping it doesn't also bring mages down on us because they love cairns. Fingers crossed on that. We'll see how quickly Mage gets published. But for us, I'm hoping we all survive long enough to be the reluctant cairn leaders for the next generation of players. I would love to see a grizzled Aiden teaching pups. I would love to see Aspen in her wisdom, leading and being the Solomon. And Joseph sitting out in a hut at the end of the cairn. Just only go to him when you need him. He's weird. You'll be confused. That kind of thing. I want to see Jester riling up the young pups to go do stuff. I want to see her calling war cries. I want to see that happen for all of us. I hope Preston's wrong, and we all survive to see that. But yeah, I mean, Joseph tried to kill himself already in the Umbra, so you guys would have had a bad time. So I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he's the one to go.
So I want to remind everyone again about our giveaway today. We are getting this amazing dice bag from Chromatic Creation from our very own Crafty Mirage, and it could be yours. You could have it in your hands if you just put hashtag Crafty in the chat. And we're about to wrap up here, so we're going to have that drawing after another question or two. So put in hashtag Crafty in the chat to be entered for one of those soft, so nice dice bags that she offers up to us. And we're so grateful to Chromatic Creation and Crafty for giving us this amazing, amazing gift and this amazing opportunity and being such a strong and firm member of our community, but just a supporter of what we do here and being so generous as to offer one of these bags as a prize. So hashtag Crafty in the chat to support not just Chromatic Creation, but to support everything St. Pete by Night. And if you don't win, or even if you do win, go check out the products she offers. Get in touch with her. She makes custom creation. She makes wizard hats. She makes all kinds of things, not just dice bags. So if, TTRPG supplies aren't what you're looking for, if it's crocheted and if it's crafty, reach out to Chromatic Creation and support them. And thanks so much to them for supporting us and making this happen. So one of my final questions before we wrap up here would be, what's your sales pitch to get people to watch this show? We've had great viewership and, rewatch is going up. People, viewing on demand is going up. But what would be your sales pitch for people to tune in to Rage Across Tampa? What would you say to them to try and convince them to check out the story and the show that we're doing?
Everyone loves a good story. Everyone wants the drama, horror, romance. Rage Across Tampa, produced by St. Pete by Night, gives you all of these plus more. Check us out on Tuesdays on Twitch, and you'll be able to experience the full love and light and the darkness of the world. Brought to you by St. Pete by Night.
Okay, Tamp. I wasn't expecting something so...
You said sales!
You did it! You did it! I just wasn't expecting it to sound so polished and like it was like on Home Shopping Network. It was so good. Chip, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not going to do a commercial. It is a great story and it's so nuanced and the characters are all so deep and they all have their own amazing stories happening within the bigger picture. And this session, the story's got everything. It's got fighting, it's got romance, it's got it's got the drama, and it's got the funnies. It does. It has. There's so much whatever you like. There's something to be had for everybody who's watching. Also, it'll teach you some things about Werewolf because we do our best to make sure we teach the mechanics and the lore and as much as we possibly can. So if you want to learn more about Werewolf, you should probably watch it.
Okay. Simon.
Okay, I want to keep this really, really short. We have a ton of fun making this, and it's not fair to the rest of the world to not share that fun. So join us, have some fun, have some laughs, have some tears. It's a blast. You'll enjoy it.
Well, I thank you guys so much for taking the time. I mean, this is the second time I'm getting you guys on a stream this week, and I really appreciate you taking the additional time to come and inflate my ego and talk about how amazing I am and how amazing my game is. No, seriously, this is one of my favorite games of all time I've ever run. I never thought I would like Werewolf. I really actually took this on thinking it was going to be a burden at first because I was like, Werewolf's not my jam, but somebody's got to do it. And, I'm a control freak, so I had to spearhead it and try it for myself before I just let people go crazy on my server with the game. And Werewolf is quickly becoming one of my favorite games. Vampire will always be number one in my heart, but Werewolf is really creeping up on it really quickly. Not just because it's a good system, not because I'm loving 5th edition, but because you guys have made this experience so incredible and are telling one of my favorite stories of all time. So I'm so grateful for that. And so go check these amazing individuals out individually. Their social media is going to be listed in the credits there. But more importantly, check them out on Rage Across Tampa, which airs Tuesday nights live on Twitch at 10 p.m. Eastern, or go catch up on the old episodes either in Twitch in the highlights or over on YouTube, where they are posted 5 days later. In fact, tonight, the last episode of Rage Across Tampa is going live on YouTube in about an hour. So you can catch up on the 14 episodes we've done of Rage Across Tampa, catch up with the story, which we will be continuing this coming Tuesday with episode 15. So now let's do our drawing for the Chromatic Creation dice bag. Those who have been putting hashtag crafty in the chat all night long are entered in to the winning. And the winner of the dice bag is Krazaz. So Krazaz, you could reach out to your storyteller, Crafty Mirage, with your information and get that dice bag shipped off to you immediately. That's almost very convenient. That worked out really nicely since you were in touch all the time, so I don't even have to encourage you to get in touch. So you get the dice bag from Chromatic Creation and from Crafty Mirage. Thank you so much to our sponsor and our fellow storyteller, Crafty, for being so generous and donating to the stream. And thank you guys so much for joining us here tonight. I could talk about this game forever, and I'm sure we're going to do a follow-up at some point on After Dark with the table as we get further along in the story. And I will one day corner Nori into being on After Dark so that she could actually talk about this game and the players and answer all the amazing questions we've asked tonight. But thank you so much for joining us on After Dark tonight. This coming week, tomorrow, Sunday, we've got episode 3 of Bloody Strings, Bear the Bard's Chronicle in the Camarilla. We've got Tuesday night, Rage Across Tampa, episode 15. Then on Thursday, we have Don't Get Caught, Crafty's Anarch Chronicle, starring Krazaz, and there might be a very particularly sexy Baron, Toreador Baron, making an appearance on that particular episode, so tune in for that. And then we're going to actually be announcing the debut date coming up soon for the What the Hell Is That? Hunter Chronicle, ran by our very own Aussie, Coldark. So we'll be announcing the debut of that coming up in the next couple of weeks. So you'll get a little bit of Vampire, a little bit of Werewolf, and a little bit of Hunter coming up very, very soon to the Twitch stream here. There's plenty and plenty of content to be viewed. So just be a part of it all because it really does support what we do here. But I'm Kent, and for these amazing players who make all my dreams come true, thank you so much for tuning into After Dark. We'll see you next week. Have a good night, everybody. This has been a St. Petersburg by Night production. After Dark is produced in agreement with the World of Darkness and Dark Pack. The host for After Dark is Kent. Visit our website at stpbynight.com for more information about all of our productions and how you can become part of our community. Thank you for listening. Until next time, fangs, stakes, and claws out.